And how we doing, everybody?
You just suspended me, Ravi. This is Section 10. This is the podcast.
You just got suspended, Tyler.
Fuck!
I can't believe it. You just got suspended, Tyler. I hate to do that to you. I am sorry about that, my friend. Tyler Milliken of the Section 10 podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ravi. I'm doing good. I think today's been arguably, besides the day Bregman signed and when he showed up, has probably been the most positive day at Red Sox training camp. And I know there's certain people that want to paint a bad vibe or whatever it is with some of the injuries and sickness going on, questions with the closer competition. But if you're a Red Sox fan and you've seen the Rafael Devers comments today, I think you're smiling.
Yeah, there's been some positivity quite a bit this spring. Of course, it's Red Sox land. There's going to be the little bit of negativity here and there. It's just the way it is here in Red Sox land. But you got to love the vibes that have been going on this spring so far. Everything just seems to be going right, minus a few things. We'll dive into that tonight. We're going to be talking about Rafael Devers here. We'll dive into what's going on with the rotation. We'll talk about the bullpen. Get your thoughts on everything here tonight. We are getting rather close to the regular season. I think I was just listening to Section 10. I think, what was it, this morning? And I think even Steve said, the regular season creeps up on you. It really, it is. We're about a couple of weeks away here. It's getting exciting. But before we get into it, we are just going to play today's sponsor, and we'll get right back to you.
FT fam, if you love ripping packs of cards, there is a modern way to do that now on Arena Club with their slab packs and crats. I know you love ripping slab packs and getting that sweet card that you've always been looking for.
Yeah, and you don't have to go through all the other ones, all the Kratz cards that are in there. Bang, you just get the big one, the one that you're just peeking right around the corner when you open that pack, the one you expect to get.
Also, Arena Club will make you an instant offer for your card based on its market value. You'll get an instant offer of 90% of the estimated value, so you can accept it on the spot, simple, fast, and risk-free. Use that cash to buy more slab packs, and you can get your cards officially graded by Arena Club. So go check it out right now, FT fam. You can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and then use the code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/FOUL, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase. Get after it, FT fam.
All right. We're just
Robbie, what did I do
again.
now?
We're getting
Let me know what I'm doing wrong.
Left. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. There's just
This
something.
is me. I promise you. I have to be doing something.
I don't know what's going on. Hold on a second. We're gonna fix that. We're done with the suspensions, Tyler.
Please.
I'm so sorry. I am so sorry about that. But everyone, let's dive into it here. And again, check out the sponsor for today. Use the code FOUL, FOUL. They got some great deals going on over there. And if you are with us here live on YouTube, hit the like button for us. Subscribe if you're new. And if you're with us in audio format, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps out with the algorithm. But everyone, let's dive into it here. So Tyler, just to give the audience at home, just in case they have not heard of Tyler Milliken, give them the rundown. What's going on over at Section 10. What do you got going on at 985, the Sports Hub as well?
Yeah, I'm a baseball nerd. That's just essentially who Tyler Milliken is. I do work at 985 the Sports Hub. That's where a lot of people kind of first figured out who I was. I work as the associate producer on that program. And you go back to 2021, and I was really big on the 2021 Red Sox team. And fortunately, over the years, it's kind of blossomed into a lot more opportunities, not only talking ball at the station, but going into 2022 when Section 10 came to an end, as Jared left Barstool and went to DraftKings, he brought me along to do Name Redacted. And at that time, it was me, Jared, Pat Light, and Pete Blackburn. And I'll be real with you, I had no relationship with Jared whatsoever. It was actually James Stewart, who's the producer of Felger and Maz, who kind of connected us because they've been very close for a long time. I joined the Name Redacted program at that point. We did 2 seasons. The second season was basically just me and Jared. Then Section 10 came back this year, and I was able to join Steve and Jared and Coley and what many people kind of see as the podcast with the Boston Red Sox, and the fact that they were happy to bring me along. And I do come from a little bit of a opposite angle. I'm not in my mid 30s. I'm in my mid 20s, and I lean closer to the, today's baseball fan. I'm super into the numbers. I'm super into the metrics. I love prospects. If you see my Twitter at Tyler Milliken _ I'm tweeting some prospect, and there's some angry 60-year-old man from the radio audience telling me that. Do you remember Lars Anderson? And I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
I got you. Please. Not every prospect is a bust because you remember the ones that were. Not everyone's Trey Ball. I promise you that. And that's a very, it's painful, but that's a very common conversation these days with, the big three knocking down the door to the big leagues.
I'm actually really happy and also very sad you mentioned Trey Ball, because that was when I really started getting into the draft. Like, I remember, what was that pick? Was it the 8th pick, 7th pick?
7th pick, 2013.
I remember being so excited because we never had draft picks that high. We were always, late round, looking at the 2nd round, 3rd round picks. So I was like, oh man, 7th round pick or 7th pick in the draft in the 1st round. Who the heck is this Trey Ball guy? And unfortunately, that did not.
You go a couple years later, you got Andrew Benintendi, 7th overall. We've had Marcelo Meyer since then, and picking in the teens. Hopefully, moving forward, we're picking in the back of the 20s a lot more often.
Yeah, it'll be the draft. It's become one of my favorite parts of the entire year, not just for the Red Sox, but all of Major League Baseball. I'm glad it's really grown the way it's gotten to now. With one more question before we really dive into the Red Sox stuff. Over on Section 10, you guys are doing a great show, but I have to throw a stat at you, my friend. Coming into the latest episode, you were at 27 suspensions. Okay, I don't know how many you picked up in the last. I think you had 2 or 3. I could be wrong. What is the plan here moving forward with the suspensions? Are you going to try to, really, find a way to get out of these, or are you just going to keep pushing on here?
I want all of them. I don't fear any of them. Please listen, if I'm going to get suspended for slandering Bobby Delbeck, I'm going to keep on doing it. If I get slandered or suspended for telling the truth, that's not my problem. That's your problem. Just give it time. And I feel like more often than not, people look at the suspensions and they're unjust. They're not fair. And sometimes, do I earn it a little bit? I can be a little crazy, sure. But when you're talking ball, crazy things happen. You're going to say some things that hurt people's feelings. And it's kind of what I like to do.
Well, for coming on today, I have a gift for you.
Now
it might not be a gift because you said you want all the suspensions. But for coming on my show today, I decided to put a reverse suspension on there for you. I don't know if you can hear. Hold on. Wait. We got it.
This sounds like an acid trip while being suspended, but I'll take it. It's not exactly cherry, but I'll take it.
Listen, that is my gift for you for coming on today.
Thank you, Robbie.
I have taken one of your suspensions away. But let's hope neither of us get suspended anymore in this episode.
Please.
But let's dive into it here. So, Red Sox, the big news today, and it's really been the big news pretty much all spring training, or really ever since Alex Bregman got signed. What's going on with third base? What's happening at second base? There's all these position battles going on, or big question marks at these positions. Rafael Devers, he came out today, said, he just wants to help the team win. I'm going to be honest. I would have just liked to have heard those comments when he first spoke on the bench in Fort Myers. It feels like such a different tune. Anyway, but that's besides the point.
But Robbie, I think what you're saying there is a major part of this, right? And I've been very hard on this take, and I see some people agree, some people disagree. I think the way the Red Sox handled this situation with Devers was very poorly. And
yes, that too.
You go back to the end of the season press conference and the messaging throughout the offseason. At the end of the season press conference, Craig Breslow made 2 things clear. He complimented the improvements Rafael Devers had made on defense, despite the defensive metrics telling you a much different story. But he highlighted the shoulder injuries at the time and him playing through that. He also told Rafael Devers, or spoke to him, saying, if anything's going to happen, we will talk with you before that happens.
Yep.
You look at the course of the offseason, if you just follow the reporting that Jen McCaffrey had initially right after Bregman signed, when they missed out on Juan Soto, it became about Alex Bregman. You tie in the Sean McAdam report, who in November had plan B as Nolan Arenado. So you're telling me basically at the end of November, early December, you knew it was going to be Bregman or Arenado that you were essentially going after, right?
Yep.
Okay, that should tell you we probably should have some kind of conversation with Rafael Devers and get on the same page so he understands what's going to happen. Not just to, match our word or what we had previously said, but to, figure out the promise that was made to him about being the third baseman for several years to come. Instead, you were gassing up his defense. And Sean McAdams said this on a recent Fenway rundown. Devers was told throughout the offseason, like Tristan Casas, that all the rumors you hear, they're bullshit. They're nothing to, take. Don't obsess over them. People are just talking and reporting. And it's one thing to do that to a Tristan Casas, who's a young player who does not have the credibility or the biggest contract in Red Sox history. Yep. No, Rafael Devers has those things, right? And then you throw in the Bregman, Court couldn't stop hammering about how much he wanted to see him play second base.
Yeah.
Of course, Devers showed up to camp and looks at it as, well, you told me the rumors were bogus. Then you signed Bregman. But hey, you said the entire time he was going to be a second baseman. Yep. You told me I improved defensively. And then not only do I show up to camp, but you're essentially trying to warm me up to DH when what changed? What, reshaped this conversation? It's the fact that you love Christian Campbell. Anyone who's followed the prospect world, and the Red Sox are obviously paying more attention to Christian Campbell than anybody, they've known how special he is. And if you wanted him to be that player, to try and make the opening day roster at that time, then explain that. Just be transparent on the issue. Don't tell the dude one thing and be surprised when you drop it on him after he's been in Fort Myers for a month that, hey, that position that you've played your entire life that you were promised that meant so much to you and we said you improved at, guess what? It's time to go to DH. If you had just went and approached it a month or two earlier, it would be a different conversation. And anyone who wants to act like over the offseason when it came to Devers, if you brought up the idea of him moving to DH, it was, oh, he'll do it. It's Rafi. Rafi's happy-go-lucky. His agent sang a different tune nationally, locally, Spear, Nightingale. The writing was on the wall that this was going to be a problem. Instead, they basically said, we'll figure it out when it happens. And guess what? When you do that, you get a blow up in the media like you did.
Yeah, the way you just described it, perfect, pretty much. But just kind of adding on where I do feel like I don't think anyone was really right, or I don't think anyone was really necessarily like wrong. I think it was just a perfect storm of miscommunication. I think that was the big thing in the end. I think you can really just look at the Red Sox front office. Why wasn't there a conversation with Rafi? Kind of like I think about the Yankees, where Aaron Judge seems to have, a bit of a connection there. Like, he's a guy where he would like to get a phone call about whatever they're thinking about. Bryce Harper with the Phillies, that's a guy where, he gives his input. Yes, he's a player at the end of the day, but you would kind of like Rafi to be a part of that conversation. I do think, I think also the media, the way he was asking him the questions didn't help necessarily. So I feel
like lighter fluid on a fire.
Yeah, I feel like there were just a lot of wrong things and just bad timing and just, things could have just been handled better, I think, from everyone. In Rafi, yes, he was kind of thrown into the fire there. I feel like, maybe he could have worded some things differently and maybe the way he answered some things, but then again, you can just look at the front office. I think collectively, it just wasn't really done all that well. It is what it is. It seems like, since then, there's probably been some tea and cookies. They have sat down and they've figured some things out. Probably some more positivity has been exchanged between the two. But yeah, I can imagine at the time it was frustrating because it was a lot of emotions going on at that time too. You bring it, you just make a huge signing of Bregman. You didn't really have one of those signings for a long time. A lot of good things going on, and then I felt like maybe that got lost in the shuffle or something along the way. But looking at it now, like we said, seems like there's good vibes all the way around now. How ultimately do you see opening day? With this lineup, do you still see a possibility where Rafi could end up playing third with Bregman playing second? Yoshida, who knows what's going on there, him at DH? Or do you see Rafi being the DH, Bregman at third? How do you see this shaking out for opening day?
I think if the way the Red Sox are going about it here, I think a lot of it focuses in on Christian Campbell, and I think that's where this entire conversation goes. That's why we say, hey, Rafi, if you were on the field playing the best third base anybody ever saw, no one would care because Christian Campbell is going to kind of decide this convo. And I think him now being at second base exclusively in games for the last 2 weeks of camp, especially as he started to find his bat. He didn't get a hit yesterday, but the previous 4 games he had a hit after a very slow start. To me, that was like, hey, we got about 2 weeks here. Let's see if you can make that push. And we know the organization wants him on that opening day roster. I think at this point in time, the way the Red Sox are going about it and the way Devers has been kind of handling himself, it feels like they've told him more likely than not, however this is going to play out, you're going to be a DH. Bregman hasn't played a single inning at second base yet. There hasn't even been a hint. And yes, we saw some backfield work, but if you wanted those reps and you wanted to get a guy comfortable, Devers doesn't have to be on the field to get him a day at second base. That's just the reality of that situation. And I think David Hamilton, who's having a very strong spring, who Alex Cora has highlighted going back to the winter meetings about the weight he's added, and really was a big David Hamilton fan when a lot of people weren't because of the speed he brought to the lineup, something Cora begged for years and years and years for. And I think they love his defense at second. At shortstop, I never want to see David Hamilton play. At second base, he's above average. He could be a Gold Glove contender. And I know it's night and day, and it's a little weird to see it that way, but look at the metrics from this past year. He was elite over there. So at this point in time, I'm pretty confident Devers is going to be a DH on opening day, but that's not the way I would go about the lineup. I don't think that's the most efficient way of putting the roster together right now.
Yeah, I've kind of changed my tune on this, because spring, even though, opening day is creeping up pretty quick, spring training is a long period of time where a lot of things can happen, different directions can come up. And about a week and a half ago, I was thinking, you're probably going to see Bregman at second. They're playing him at third now because, whatever that, they got to get Campbell and Grissom in there. So Rafi, while he's out, you can just put Bregman at third. But now as time goes on, I'm starting to think here, maybe they feel like they can probably just throw Bregman at second base and they feel like maybe he could just handle it and he'll be fine. But you would like for him to get some playing time there, especially, in major league spring training games. So feels like it's kind of trending in that direction. That's kind of where I'm at too. I feel like it's going to be Rafi at DH, but I still feel like you're going to have Rafi at least in like a part-time role at third. Bregman needs a day or whoever at second needs a day. Rafi can go play some third there, whatever happens with Yoshida,
that was one of the things. I was like, Devers, if you want to start getting him a little time at first base, I don't think that's a crazy idea, especially if you're considering, a Tristan Casas trade, as we've seen. Hey, maybe if something happens to Casas, Romy Gonzalez is all you have for first base depth right now. So it'd be nice to have an alternative, especially when you have a Yoshida that, hey, Casas goes down. He's kind of your cleanup hitter. Well, cool. We'll move Devers to first and you're still getting an above average bat and Yoshida in the lineup. But this is why things are awkward for me with the current construction, because with Yoshida right now, if you are putting Devers at DH, he still hasn't been cleared to throw in game. We have not seen him out in the outfield yet. Are you basically ready to give up on the guy and make him a fifth outfielder? Because, you're not going to be in a situation where you ever platoon Yoshida with any of the three out there right now. We know the Red Sox want Ceddanne Rafaela in center every day. Jaron Duran's not coming out of the lineup. And Wilyer Abreu and Yoshida, they aren't platoon partners. And even if Yoshida isn't ready, or if Abreu isn't ready, maybe you can fake it with Rob Refsnyder, but Yoshida's not throwing in games yet. It feels like to me they're going to try and stash him on the IL, which feels crazy when he's played a month of games, but they keep saying they want him out there defensively, and if he can't do it, that's probably their reasoning.
Yeah, I think that's kind of seems to be the play. In a way, I feel bad for Yoshida. This is a guy where, if none of this was happening, Yoshida would actually be a guy that I would be thinking very highly of for this coming year. We take a look at the advanced metrics with him last year. There were still a lot of good things, especially with the plate discipline, and he was going through a shoulder injury. So, that'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with Yoshida. But I feel like that's kind of the way, because like you just said, they do have that excuse right in their back pocket that they can just kind of pull that card out and be like, oh, okay, well, we can go to an IL stint. We'll figure it out when later down the road. Which I want to ask you. Oh, sorry. What were we going to say?
No, I think the only thing that sticks out to me there too is second base defense is so important. And when you're looking at the hierarchy of defensive positioning, it's those positions up the middle, right? And putting Bregman at second will be an improvement outside of the David Hamilton time there last year over anyone else you had. It's not Valdez. It's not Vaughn Grissom. These guys who are kind of faking it at second base a little bit. No, you'd have Bregman there and still improve defensively while adding a guy. He had a 115 WRC plus last year, but the Red Sox revealed their hand when they essentially started platooning him. And when he went through those stretches last year where he was sitting, where it was clear they just felt like in terms of roster construction, he didn't make a ton of sense. And I think he's too good of a player to DFA, but if he's going to be a fifth outfielder, man, I don't know what your choice is. Either eat it on a trade and get him off the books or do something, because you're wasting a bench spot on a guy who deserves more opportunity.
Yeah, that's kind of the way. Maybe, who knows? Maybe a team out there could be looking for a bat, but there's just so much money involved. It's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be a storyline to pay attention to this year. One name you actually mentioned, Vaughn Grissom. Vaughn Grissom's actually, yes, Christian Campbell, he's been hitting a little bit as of late, but so has Vaughn Grissom a little bit. He's been picking up the bat. Could you see a scenario where, let's say Campbell maybe starts to slow down here a little bit? Maybe they feel like he needs a little time. Could you see Vaughn Grissom at second base on opening day?
I feel like I'd be pretty surprised at this point in time. I think he's been passed on the depth chart by David Hamilton. And listen, I think Vaughn Grissom, unfortunately, how things played out last year, 2024 was so crucial for him. And, you go back to the start of last season, nobody saw what Christian Campbell was going to do, except maybe the Sox prospect guys. And even that, they didn't see it to this level. The guy became the biggest breakout prospect in the sport.
I remember seeing the numbers. I'm sorry to cut you off there. I have to bring this up. I was gonna say, I remember even seeing the numbers and thinking, whatever. I remember Matthew Lugo was putting up great numbers. Yes. And I remember, but then it was the picture I saw of Christian Campbell. I'm like, holy cow, this guy! What is this guy eating? Okay, yep, that guy. That's the guy right there. Sorry, go on. I needed to get that in.
You nailed it. When we interviewed him in Worcester last year, you stood next to him and you're like, oh my God, this guy, body. He not the biggest jack guy, but a body that is a man body that is strong, athletic, can do a lot of different things, and also just crush baseballs. And especially with him being in the first year, such massive swing changes, which shout out to Jason Oakart, Driveline. When he came to the Red Sox and Chaim Bloom hired him going into 2023, I think that is one of the most underrated hires in the entire sport the last 3 or 4 years, because he brought in this core four philosophy that has essentially back-to-back years, you had the biggest breakout prospect in the sport. That is such a crazy thing to do. And it makes me sit here, and now I think even people, when they get drafted, it's like, dude, if you go to there, they can take you from maybe an interesting bat to, one of the better bats in all of the minor leagues. And I think right now for the Red Sox and where they're at with Vaughn Grissom, it's just, he doesn't have a ton of positional flexibility. And I was hoping to see him at left field or third base to make him, a more logical guy to keep on the bench. But right now, for a second base only guy that is still probably needs everyday at bats, and he's still so young to keep him growing, I think the best place for him is Worcester. And hey, if injuries cause something to happen, that's one thing. But if he goes down to AAA and he mashes like he did the last month of the year, or like he did in 2023 with Atlanta at AAA, then you ship him as, a second or third piece, maybe in a deal. And that's going to be needed at the trade deadline in some capacity.
And he's still so young. I think
extremely.
I feel like there's some fatigue with Vaughn Grissom, not even just with the Red Sox, but just in Major League Baseball in general, because he's a name, Braves fans were, just gassing this guy up, for years. You're thinking,
Darwinson got taken to the moon.
Yeah, and I just feel like there is a little fatigue with him at this point, but I think that's probably the right way to go. I know Cora really wants to give him a chance. He is someone where, when we spoke earlier in the offseason, he said he feels like Grissom needs a mulligan. But, in the end, the way the cookie crumbles is not, sometimes the way we all want. But no, that's kind of that's where I'm at too. I think he's really just depth at this point. And if he gets a chance, maybe he can take advantage. We'll see. Yeah. But there is another position out there. And I think this is actually very interesting. Maybe a little less interesting now because of this plague that has been running through the Red Sox clubhouse. But Willie Abreu had an illness, gastrointestinal illness. Coming into spring training, lost a lot of weight. Same thing happened with Vaughn Grissom last year. Lost a lot of weight after getting the flu. But Willie Abreu, he's very behind at this point. As of the last I read, he hadn't even swung a bat. I think he was working on tracking pitches. But, there was at one point I was thinking maybe this could be a chance for Roman Anthony here, right? And this was a guy, I think me and you had tweeted out that something very similar about how he was getting on base and whatnot. And I'm thinking this guy's, you just watch Roman at the plate. He just looks like he plays the part. Like he just looks the part. But then he ended up getting sick. So Now,
10, 12 pounds he loses on top of it.
yeah, and it's like,
come
oh
on.
my goodness gracious. But so now right field, my hopeful pick of maybe Roman Anthony surprising people, I'm not so sure. Maybe they feel like he's going to need a little bit more time, go back to Worcester to start the year, really build himself back up again. But now right field, this is interesting. Trace Thompson, he's come to the Red Sox on an invite here, looking like Barry Bonds this spring training. How do you see this shaking out? Could you see a situation where, could we maybe see even like Duran maybe go over to right field or something like that? Maybe that could be a way if Yoshida's shoulder is healthy. Maybe he can get out in left field. Or could you see someone like Trace Thompson kind of being that stopgap kind of a guy until Willie Abreu is ready to go?
I think there's a possibility, and I look at the recent McAdam report talking about the Red Sox are looking for right-handed outfield depth. I think you can read that two different ways. I think you can either look at that as, hey, we might put Trace Thompson on the opening day roster for 2 weeks. It's awesome that he is Barry Bonds of spring training, but we know how it goes with these kind of quadruple A baseball players. Like they have a ridiculous spring, something clicks, the season starts, and they don't do anything. And they're back to showing you why they were in AAA the previous season. And to Trace Thompson's credit, a couple of years ago with the Dodgers, he had a Linsanity run that was pretty special. But I took that report as two things. It's either we're going to grab an outfielder that gets cut or has an opt-out and we'll bring him in, or, hey, we're going to bring Trace Thompson. We want someone we can stick in AAA. So when we have to DFA him in 2 or 3 weeks, the depth doesn't change. And I think a lot of that is going to kind of involve what happens at second base with Christian Campbell in that entire scenario right now. But I think if Campbell doesn't seem ready and they're kind of leaning towards, a David Hamilton over there, it might make a lot of sense for them to, ride out a 2-week outfield option they pick up or Trace. But I think they're looking for depth out there because Abreu being ready, I know he keeps saying he's going to be.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time seeing it, and I feel for him because there was an opportunity for him to face left-handers this spring that I think was his last chance to say, like, you weren't going to play, you weren't going to basically make it so they weren't going to go to Roman Anthony, but to show that, hey, I'm an everyday guy. I want to make it almost impossible for them to kind of push someone above me or take me out of the lineup. Hell, I just want to Gold Glove in the hardest right field in baseball. Now it's like he's going to get a slow start. It's going to be late. By that time, if he's ready May 1st, Roman Anthony might be kicking the door down. And honestly, I think it's sooner rather than later with him. He looks ready for the big leagues right now.
Oh, I remember watching one of the games this spring, just watching him at bat. I'm like, this guy looks like he's been in the majors like for years. Like just a good frame, just looks the part. Like I said, kind of reminds me of the situation of, go back to, one of your favorite years, one of your favorite championships. Well, after that, after the 2007 season, we saw Jacoby Ellsbury completely break down that door in 07. You go to 08, you're still looking at, Coco Crisp, who's still your guy, but you knew Ellsbury was right there and you knew it was only a matter of time. It kind of almost feels like that in a way where, it feels like the clock is ticking here on Willie Abreu. And it's unfortunate to see how this shook out. Unfortunately, we had another injury here today. Lots of injuries, man. I mean, that's the one thing I hate about spring training. Good. I don't want to say fun to talk about, but it gives you something to talk about, the injuries and whatnot. Like we had Garrett Cole recently, but the Red Sox, they could not avoid the injury bug in the rotation. Cutter Crawford, Brian Bayo, they've been pushed back here. Cutter Crawford actually might be missing a bit of time, but Bayo, along with now Lucas Giolito, looks like they're going to miss, Giolito, maybe a start, maybe 2, Bayo, maybe around the same. But right now, the way the rotation is shaking out for opening day, you're looking like you got maybe Richard Fitz, maybe Quinn Priester, maybe looking like the likely candidates for the 4 and 5 spot. How are you feeling about the rotation going into 2025? How do you feel about Fitz and Priester maybe getting a shot?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sweating much. I know it's a little scary to see these kind of injuries, but I look at a team like the Yankees. You lose your ace in Garrett Cole, right? You look at the Orioles, who have an old man rotation with Sagano and Charlie Morton at 41. Ugh. They're begging for Grayson Rodriguez to be this ace, their young arm, so that, they can write off not paying Corbin Burns. And now his elbow's barking and he's getting a cortisone shot. The top 3 of the Red Sox rotation, I still think is in a place right now where, there's no need to panic when you have the likes of Crochet and Houck, 2 guys who, got Cy Young votes a year ago and were, strong, true 1 and 2. And then Buehler, who has looked really strong so far in camp, you're not sweating too much. And I think Bayo could easily push himself into that 3 if you see what he did in the second half last year after adding the 4-seamer. It was like a 3.6 ERA. That's Brian Bayo to me. I think that's kind of where he slots in here. But to have the depth you have now, it's a completely different story about what the last few years have been. I remember in 23, in a very similar situation, Paxton grabs his hamstring, first game back on the mound. It was like, man, that's it. It was like, we do not have a way to survive this, right? Yeah. So not only with, Bayo and Giolito, they're out 1 to 2 starts. It's not a lengthy thing like those other 2 pitchers I named on the Yankees and the Orioles. This, or even like a Luis Heel injury, that's going to take him probably to about the All-Star break or something like that. You can get by for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And I think it's even easier when you look at Richard Fitz, who out of the young arms, he's probably the arm that has popped the most this spring, adding 2 more pitches to his arsenal, getting up to 99. And I've had a lot of concerns about Fitz and his ability to miss bats. It was a 3.9 K per 9 in his final 4 starts last year, an issue that existed at AAA, right? And I want to see what he looks like over 4-5 innings as the velo ticks down, but he's reached an echelon of velocity that we didn't think was there, or at least he didn't have. And he put in a ton of work on his shoulder and was working out at Fenway all off season. And then Quinn Priester, the velocity jump isn't as significant, but it is up. Pirates fans told me we'd never see him hit 97 again. And, first couple outings out there, he'll top out there, and it's more 94, 95 with the cutter he's much more comfortable with. I think both of those young arms are the difference of Craig Breslow's philosophy and the roster building they've done. And to have those 2 there, and then Criswell and Dobbins waiting at AAA, you could do way worse. They can definitely survive a couple weeks. And I think Cora said as much today. We're just at a different place as an organization than we have been, really this decade.
Yeah, I think a lot of credit, a lot of people were getting on to Craig at one point. There were no moves being made. And I think even Jared at one point said, starting to question the ability, can he close? It was becoming sort of something there. But when you look back at this offseason, obviously what they were able to achieve, and, but looking at just the depth that they've built, you gave up, I don't know how the heck the Yankees gave up, someone like Fitz for Verdugo. I'm looking back at that. I know hindsight is a nice thing to have, but I remember thinking at the time, like, man, you just gave up like a top 15 prospect here in Fitz, and you're getting 1 year of Verdugo. And I'm thinking, like, now you look back on that and you're like, oh, okay, well, give a lot of credit to Craig for pulling that off, so. Really,
look at Verdugo sitting out there right now hoping for a job. He's still waiting. And you got Weissert in that deal, as well. And look at Weissert. He's had a very strong spring and a very strong finish to last year, too.
Yeah, and getting, Priester as well. I was a big Nick York fan. I was really thinking like this guy at one point could be, maybe your second baseman of the future. I hope he does very well in Pittsburgh. But you turned a guy that was blocked in your system who, it was coming up on a roster crunch anyway. And you turned him into, Quinn Priester, who was, a high draft pick at one point, who maybe you could turn around, change of scenery kind of a guy. So, a lot of credit to Craig there. But speaking of the pitching, when we take a look at the bullpen, yes, I am more comfy, like you said, with the rotation. The bullpen, I have all offseason been thinking, okay, like, I don't know. Like this, I feel like something's missing back there, and who knows? Maybe that piece that could be missing. Maybe that's already there. Somewhere in that bullpen that could emerge at some point. But right now, Liam Hendricks, there's a lot of rust showing. I feel like he could still work through that. Chapman, he's been all right. He's walked a few guys this spring. A guy like Slayton could be one of those guys that could emerge as your guy at the back end of the bullpen. But right now, kind of what are your thoughts on the bullpen? And, if I were to ask you this, who do you think ends up getting the first save of 2025? And who do you think ends up getting the majority of the saves this year?
It's a great question. The first save, I think, will go to Liam Hendricks. I think they're going to try to ride it out. And, listen, he's given an earned run up in his last 3 outings. I don't think he's had a strikeout in his last 2. Yeah. And Cora has kind of stepped up again and again saying, I'm not worried. Like, he's working through stuff. He hasn't pitched in 2 years, which is a very fair criticism. What worries me more is the velocity, right? He's topped out at 96. If you go back to his last full season, which was 2022 at this point, he was averaging right around 97 and a half, actually a tick above. So the fact that he's sitting more 94, 95, and even earlier in outings, it's closer to 93, as he spoke with Mass Live about today. That is a bit worrisome for me. But I think they'll give him the respect of, going out there. Let's see what it looks like with adrenaline. The regular season, we keep saying when the lights turn on, do you all of a sudden get to that 97, 98? Because I think that's the stuff. 1 or 2 ticks for a lot of these guys is the difference. It really is, between being a 9th inning arm and, your fringy 7th inning arm that you rotate again and again. And you hope with more reps, he becomes that guy. And it's just, he's such a positive dude. It feels like he has that kind of energy you want at the back of the bullpen, that wildness, the experience as well. But I think ultimately Justin Slayton's going to be the guy who takes that role over. I think he's baby Chris Martin. You look at the walk rate last year, it was like 1.5 walk per 9. Out of a closer, I want a guy with nasty stuff who misses bats and doesn't walk anyone. That is Justin Slayton's MO. And if you want a young guy that you have control over, another great find by Craig Breslow that did not get enough attention throughout last year, but especially before the season through the Rule 5 draft. I think Slayton's going to kind of evolve into that role. And he reminds me a lot. You look at that 2021 Whitlock, and I think he's going to be a weapon the way they're going to use him 2-3, innings at a time to finish a game off and reset the pen. I think you're going to see Slayton as almost the bullpen Whitlock that never got forced to the rotation and what that pathway would look like. And I think I wouldn't shy away from trying to get him on an extension at something very cheap, because I think his price is only going to go up as he starts racking up those saves. And when you have saves next to your name, that's money, man.
It is. And, I'm glad you brought up, Garrett Whitlock. Whitlock, man. Yeah. I know there was a lot of people that were on the other side of this, but I was always on the side where I just wanted Whitlock to stay in the bullpen. Go back a few years, 2021, he was so good in the bullpen. And then they tried doing the starter thing. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm okay with it. But I saw what happened with Papelbon back in 2006. And it was like this, I swear, it was like I was reliving that, because he came up, he was coming out of the bullpen, but then they wanted to have him, be a starter, but he wanted to be in the bullpen, and they eventually just left him there because he was so good in that role. And he
wanted to be the closer
more.
Yeah. And for Whitlock, I think that was like the difference in a lot of ways, right? Where there was clearly, he had come up as a starter and he wanted to be a starter again at some point. The whole reason when they took him in Rule 5 was, we're going to use him 3 innings at a time to protect him. And for an organization that had no starting pitching at the time, it was like, we get through this year. He builds his arm up and stays healthy. We should be in a spot where, he can be that starter we can't develop. And then you go back to 2022, that early May start against the Angels. If people remember what he looked like, I don't think he gave up a hit until the 5th inning, and someone took him deep. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like one of those outings where you sat back and it was like he was pumping 97, 98 for 5 innings. Yeah. You quickly realize he couldn't maintain that over 5, and elbow starts barking. I think Bailey did a great job last year, and I was off the starting train after 2023. I was one of those people, unfortunately, that wanted him in the rotation that entire time.
I was okay with it at one point, but
I felt like you were in a situation where he had the tools, the makeup, idol was Rick Porcello. He wanted to be that kind of workhorse. And then 2024, it seems like, they figured the stuff out for him to survive out there with the bullet slider. And then you realize again, 4 starts in, 196 ERA. He can't stay healthy. And that's what it is. And that's why Whitlock at the end of the year went to Cora and said, I want to be a reliever. That's a complete tune change from the guy who wanted to be a starter, and now, hopefully, you can still make good on that contract, too. There's still a lot of that value there, even though he didn't become, the number 3 starter they were hoping for.
Yeah, another guy that I actually have my eye on, he's having a decent spring, is Michael Fulmer. This is a guy where they brought him in last year, and, people, the negativity last offseason, I still have...
Another minor league deal, Robbie? Are you
Yeah.
freaking kidding me, man? Poverty franchise.
Like, really? This is the big splash? Michael Fulmer, he's not even pitching this year. Oh my God. If I see cheap socks one more time, I'm going to absolutely lose it.
It was him and Hendricks, I think. Like, they were like 10 days within each other or something
Yeah.
like that.
But the Fulmer one, that really got people going. I thought I was the only one where I'm like, okay, like he's been all right in the bullpen the last couple of years.
Good seventh inning arm.
Yeah. So, I wonder if maybe he could end up having a role in this bullpen this year. But either way, I'm not too worried about the bullpen right now, but I think, you kind of just want to, I'm a big roll guy. Not that, yes, I love my bread rolls with some butter on it.
Me too.
But I like the rolls in the bullpen, right? I'm a big guy on, what inning are you going? What's your spot? Yeah, mix it around here and there. But I think that is more the question mark here is who's where, who's going what inning. And I think the way they've handled their pitching staff, we saw it last year. Sure, they faded down the stretch. Obviously, the bullpen had their issues in the second half. But I don't know. I just think they got a lot to work with here, and I just think they're in a better place. But I will ask one more thing before we start to wrap things up here. If we were to maybe think about some players here where, some players that you like that maybe, how do I word this? Maybe that people aren't focusing on them too much. Who are some players, or is there one player that comes to mind where you like that player that maybe some people aren't thinking of?
I don't know if I'd categorize him in the not thinking of category. I'd probably throw a Nick Sogard if you're looking for like that underrated guy, because I just think he is the definition of like a guy who sticks in the big leagues for 10 years as a utility player, can go out in the outfield, second, third, hustles well, can steal a bag, switch hitter, puts up just professional at bats. You know what I mean? And I think even what we saw at the end of last year, while the numbers weren't great, you never felt nervous when Nick Sogard was out in the field. It was like, all right, this guy, he's just a professional out there, and he's had a great spring. He's on some Ryan Fitzgerald type vibes where clocked a couple homers, and I don't think he's going to quite be the guy who lands on the opening day roster, but he's someone, if you told me he plays 30 or 40 games and gets you through a tough part of the season when everybody was hurt and down, I wouldn't be shocked. You need those kind of guys on your bench, even if it isn't on opening day. But if you're asking me, for someone I really like and I'm excited about, listen, I know people are already guessing what I'm going to say. It's Tristan Casas. I am a Tristan Casas fanboy. I don't give a damn. People can complain and cry. I'm proud of it. And guess what? I think I'm going to end up looking pretty good for it. I go back to even last year, and I thought the handling of him down the stretch was extremely confusing and extremely frustrating. You have Connor Wong and Danny Jansen being, pushed into the lineup and him sitting, against lefties. I'm sorry. Did we forget that Tristan Casas had an 1,000 OPS in the second half of 2023? He was a top 10 hitter in the sport. That's how good that guy was. He was the one who stepped up in June and July when they were kind of on the fridges. And you could tell at that time, the Red Sox were considering selling. People wanted them to sell, and he played so well. It was really him and Turner that Heim at the deadline, as he was getting pressure to sell because they wouldn't give him money to spend, he sat back and said, hey, these guys earned the chance to keep competing and going out there. And he was at the front of it. He was the best hitter on the team at that point. It was a higher OPS plus than Rafael Devers, for that season. But even last year before he got hurt, it was a 132 WRC plus. Last year, you look at the first baseman in MLB, that would be a top 5 offensive season from a first baseman before the cartilage injury. Yep. You give him a full offseason now where, yes, he was in trade rumors. I think there was a real interest in the Red Sox side for Devers to go to first base because I think they knew there was going to be complications putting him at DH. And I think the Vladdy thing is hanging over everything where they know he wants to be here. And we know for the Red Sox, if you're 26, 27, yeah, they're going to put money on the table. They're comfortable talking long-term deals there.
Manny 2.0.
So. That's it. And I think with Tristan Casas here right now, he has a chance to just go bonkers this season. And he doesn't even have to be the guy we saw in the second half of 2023. We're just talking about, being one of the better offensive first basemen in all of baseball if he's what he was the first month before he got hurt last year. Just got to lower the Ks a little bit. And I do like what we've been hearing about him trying to push the ball of the monster with some different hitting mechanics. And hell, he had a home run yesterday. And If you were listening to the broadcast, he got robbed of a second one. I don't care what anybody says. They all said that ball was fair, and you can't challenge it during spring training. So we'll take our moral victories. But I think Tristan Casas in that fourth spot in this lineup has a chance to do some serious damage. And I think there is a Joey Votto-esque ceiling there if he completely gets there. And hey, if you shoot for that and you land amongst the stars, guess what? You're still one of the better first basemen in baseball.
Yeah, I think I almost think of Casas as like a bigger Joey Votto in a way,
Yep.
a little bit more strikeouts, but like I could definitely see that with Casas. For me, I'm just looking for him to stay healthy. That's the only thing. It's just stay on the field, right? One of the best stats is availability at the end of the day. If he stays on the field, I think he's just going to do his thing. And I think he'll be very productive. I mean, he's shown he can be productive when he's healthy. But I think that's going to be the big thing is just keeping him on the field. One guy, I'll ask you this. One under the radar guy that I have in my head is Carlos Narvaez. I feel like this is a guy where I feel like people just forget he's on the team almost, but like I feel like that was one of the more better under the radar pickups this offseason for the Red Sox because they need to improve the defense a little bit. He's got some decent defense there. With Wong, I'm expecting some regression with the bat, and I do wonder if Narvaez, I'm not sure how much he's going to hit, but I feel like he get into playing a pretty decent role, at least defensively, with this team. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're 100% right. Aaron Boone constantly, before he was dealt and after, had to sing how great he was defensively. And I think you saw it early in camp. It was his second game in, and I can't remember who was on the mound. It was a curveball in the other side or in the other batter box. He picks it, comes up and guns the runner at second with ease. And it's like, all right, that's just something Connor Wong isn't capable of. And then you look at him being one of the worst framers and blockers in Connor Wong in the sport. And like you said, you look at his Baseball Savant page, it screams regression. You saw the regression in the second half alone. And it's nice that he added weight. Hopefully the plague going around doesn't take away from it. But there is something of a Christian Vasquez vibe with Carlos Narvaez where, hey, he just looks so comfortable behind the plate. And for an organization that's all about run prevention and helping their pitchers and what they've done at AAA to just get these elite defenders who work great with the staff, Narvaez seems like their type. And they traded, Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, who wasn't as highly ranked in our system. He was much closer to that 20 range in the Yankee system. I think he's a top 10 prospect, on any list right now. So they did give up something of value. Speaks to how bad the Yankee system is too. But it's been pretty clear there's no one even really competing with him for that backup catcher job. Blake Sable, doesn't feel like there's a lot of pressure there. And I think that speaks to how good Narvaez has been on the field and behind the scenes.
Yeah, hopefully that, because, the Red Sox, they need to improve in that department. And, hopefully we'll see. But another guy that I like, and I'm going to see what you think. It's kind of, I would say maybe a bit of heart over head because when you look at the numbers, metrics wise over the last couple of years, you're not really seeing anything that's jumping off the page necessarily. So that's where I'm kind of leaning with my heart a little bit here. But I'm going Trevor Story. But I think there's some things here where the Red Sox, if you take a look at the left side of the infield, it's been dreadful, right? If Bregman is indeed going to be the third baseman long term, I think that actually helps out with Story because Bregman is such a good defender at third base. And I feel like with Story, when you're having Raffy in the poor defense at third base, you feel like probably Story has to maybe, step into another gear over there to try and, take a bit more of that workload. So I feel like having Bregman alongside Story could end up kind of helping out there, because you're going to have such good defense on the left side. So hopefully that could help with Story being a bit more durable throughout this year. Because Bregman can take a bit of that workload, and that can hopefully lead to some, what we've been hoping to see with the bat from Story. And he's been looking all right this spring. So what do you think? Did I make a good argument there for Trevor Story?
I think you did. And you just look at Trevor Story. It does not take much for him. He just needs to be on the field. When you're an elite defender and you go get 20 bags and he has power. Am I ever expecting Trevor Story to hit for average at this point in time? No, I do not. But if he can hit 240, 250, be close to a league average bat and be that 2020 guy with elite defense, guess what? That's a 3-win player. You go back to even 2022 when he was a league average bat, 100 weighted runs created plus, right? He played in 94 games that season, still had a 2.5 F-WAR. That's it. If he's out there on the field, what he can bring in, that's the good part about Bregman. in a lot of ways where Bregman's in the lineup now, he's going to be hitting third. That was where they were hoping Trevor Story was going to slot in when they signed him originally. Now he's in the fifth hole, not perfect. I think they're hoping Campbell or Anthony or someone steps into that over time, but there's less pressure on him to be that kind of, threat at the top of the lineup at this point. It's just, if he's on the field, he is going to be a valuable player. And if he's worth 3 or 4, wins, that contract, you can't get back what you already lost. But the Red Sox knew partially what they were getting into with the state of his elbow at the time. The whole sport knew it, and they decided to take that risk. If he's on the field, he shouldn't have an issue being that kind of player. And I think you even look at the injuries. I understand some people, you pin injury prone on a guy and it kind of is what it is. 2022, the Red Sox messed up on his x-rays. He was supposed to come off the IL. He had a fracture in his hand and he found out like 2 days before he was supposed to come back. At the end of the year, he gets shut down the last week because he steps on the bag weird and they're out of it. They're like, all right, it is what it is. Kind of move on. We got to keep it moving. 2023, the elbow that everyone knew explodes. Shocker. Holy crap. And they rush him back when they knew he couldn't hit just so he could play defense because it was that important. And then, you go to last year, say what you will. Yeah, he came back and it was BABIP induced. It was a 373 BABIP. He was having his fair share of luck. He was a league average bat after missing almost the entire year and rushing himself back. So if it's healthy and it's a straight line forward for him, there's clearly a way for him to be very valuable. And there's a reason they defensively collapsed when he went down last year. He and Bregman, even if it's third and short or short and second, they are going to be an elite duo one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, and I look at, let's say Story finds a way to stay healthy, ends up being a league average, like let's just say a 95, 100 WRC plus in that range.
Robbie, who is that? That's Dansby Swanson. That's Dansby Swanson right there, and that's a plenty valuable player today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example of a guy on the rival Yankees that just made it to a World Series that showed if you can just play some good defense out there at shortstop and do enough with the bat, you can get to a World Series with Anthony Volpe. I think Trevor Story is capable of putting up Anthony Volpe kind of numbers. He had a 3.4 FWAR this past year. I think if Story gives you that, I mean, at least in that range, I think you're fine. So that's for all the Red Sox fans that like to hate on Anthony Volpe. That could be our kind of. We could have our own Volpe.
At least we don't treat him like he's Derek Jeter. I think that's the difference here, right? I think that's what people get more upset about.
Yeah, that is the difference. I forget the accounts. Is there like a Volpe is king account? There's somebody like
something like that, or Volpe Enjoyer or something like that.
You got Cutter battle. Is king. Cole is king. All these king accounts. I can't keep track of them anymore. But I'll leave you one more question here. I asked this of all the guests that have been coming on here, previewing the year. Simple question. Right now, when you woke up this morning, how many wins are you seeing for the Red Sox this year?
93. I think they're going to win the AL East, and I'm feeling pretty confident in it right now. I just look at what the Yankees and Orioles have gone through on the pitching side especially, but I think the Yankees lineup, man. Giancarlo Stanton, double tennis elbows going on, looking like maybe the all-star break for him. And they lost DJ LeMahieu, who, listen, cooked. We all understand that. But, he is part of that lineup and what they're doing, so they're diving even deeper into the depth chart. When you're telling me Aaron Judge's only protection is Cody Bellinger, who had like a 750 OPS, and I think he's built for that New York ballpark. He will definitely be better, but I don't think he's going to be an MVP candidate. It's just hard for me to get too riled up. So you're telling me it's a pretty unimpressive lineup that if Aaron Judge goes down, what are they going to do? We talk about how thin, the Red Sox were the last couple of years if something went wrong. The Yankees feel that thin right now, and they do not have a farm system that can, supplement them. Trevor Story goes down tomorrow. Guess what? Marcelo Myers, if he can stay healthy, is your starting shortstop, a month or two in. And guess what? You have a top 15 prospect in the sport. Yeah. The Yankees have a top, or a bottom 10 farm system. So they don't have that lurking. And, where their rotation is right now, yeah, I think Max Fried, he's an ace. I would have been happy if the Red Sox had signed him. But after that, we're talking Carlos Rodon, who had a FIP around 4.3 last year. Yeah. Luis Hill, who wins Rookie of the Year. Cool. He's not going to be back to the All-Star break. Marcus Stroman, they were trying to trade all offseason. Will Warren hasn't proven anything at the big leagues. If you're asking me for a guy I get excited about in that rotation, it's Clark Schmidt, who I think is one of the more underrated guys, but also someone who hasn't stayed healthy, So their bullpen is a strength.
Spring.
Yeah. So like I'm kind of looking at them right now, and I look at the Orioles, who I just think it's embarrassing how they've addressed that rotation.
Oh,
If they had win
yeah.
take care of business, they should be the favorites in the American League, and they didn't.
I can't think of another situation where, because usually everyone's barking at ownership, but this is the opposite, where the ownership of the Orioles gave the green light to go spend, and Mike Elias is sitting on MLB executive burner on Twitter. I'm kidding, that's not him. And
He hates Hein Bloom, whoever it is.
yeah, not spending money and just running roughshod on his burner account. So I don't know what's going. That's weird to me.
Wild.
That's very odd.
Mike Elias is what people thought Hein Bloom was, where he's like actually scared to put money. Like, say what you will, and the contracts don't look great, but Story and Yoshida, that was real money handed out. They put out real money to get Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen, right?
Yeah.
Like the Orioles, real money to them is like Tyler O'Neill. Like that's them getting completely out of their comfort zone. And it's a shame because right now that window is wide open for them. And unfortunately, we know what this game is at the end of the year. It's pitching. That's what gets it done. And they barely have enough arms coming out of the gate. I don't know where the hell they expect to find them over the course of the season. And maybe they're willing to make another uncomfortable trade. Yeah. If I was them, I'd be all over Sandy Alcantara. I think that would be the perfect fit for them. 2 years, it's I think $17 million each year. It would make so much sense, but they're hugging on to their prospects. They don't like to take money on the books. Just feels like such a waste of an opportunity.
Yeah, and right now they on Fangraphs. Fangraphs is usually more conservative with their projections, but they have the Orioles right now at 83 and 79, along with the Blue Jays. That's another team where I don't know what the heck's going to happen with that team this year. They have the Red Sox at 85 and 77, and the Yankees at 86 and 76. They're still giving the Yankees the slight edge. I don't know. Fangraphs, they tend to love the Yankees every year. So they were at 87 before the Garrett Cole injury, so now he's down. And they only bumped it down to 86. Do you agree with that?
No, I'm sorry. I can't. I think Garrett Cole in a lot of ways is their identity on that pitching staff. Yeah. And I know people like to say he has no aura and he's a nerd and he's lame. Garrett Cole is, when he's on the mound, he is a figure. He is a presence. He is one of the greatest aces we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. And there's a reason he got paid like he did, breaking the records that he did. And even through the playoff run last year, what he was able to do. And unfortunately, it looked like that was the end of his elbow. But you take that out of any rotation, there is a massive thing to feel. And Max Fried, first year in New York, when you go to a big market, you never know what the first year is going to look like for a lot of guys. If you told me he had a hard time adjusting, would anyone be like, oh, I'm shocked? No, you wouldn't.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting this year, but I think we can all agree that it's much more exciting than it's been in a long time. I was telling Jared when he came on the show, it feels like a bit of a mix of multiple years for me because, you look at 2007, they did spend, quite a bit on that team, with Dice K, JD Drew, Julio Lugo. Did they go to that extent this offseason? Maybe not quite, right? They made a couple of great moves, but still that same kind of feel where they addressed a few areas there by spending some money. But then you also look at even like 2013, where there's still like in some areas where a little uncertainty a little bit, but you still feel like they could turn into something. I kind of get those vibes a little bit. And then I also kind of go into like 2016 a little bit, where they're kind of entering this window. 2015 was the who's the ace year, or he's the ace, and you're going into 2016. You're this competitive window is opening, right? So I feel like you're getting a little bit of everything with this year. It's very exciting, man. I got to ask you with Section 10, what do you guys got going on? Coming up. Tell the viewers at home what to expect with Section 10.
Yeah, as usual, we're going to be doing our thing on the podcast side of things. At the end of every series, there will be a new episode, but we are cooking up some plans on, a live show on opening day, home opener for the Red Sox, not obviously down in Texas or anything like that. We haven't exactly announced every detail yet, but hopefully tune into the next podcast and we'll be finalized on that front. But expect a lot more of us at Fenway Park this year. There's a different vibe around the team. The players seemingly are much more open in Jared's connections with them. They're down to talk and do different stuff. So hopefully you're seeing a lot more Section 10 at the ballpark overall. And the content's going to be coming even harder this year now that second year at Underdog, we're full force and we got a baseball team that deserves all the attention they're about to get.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I was telling you before we started recording, I was listening to the last Section 10 episode. You guys do just such great work over there, and it's always a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to listen to. Hopefully, you guys can get to Fenway more this off season or this season. Sorry, I'm still in off season mode. And hopefully, the night that the opening night, wherever you guys end up going, hopefully. Because I heard you guys talking about that on the show, talking about maybe like 10-cent tickets. Hopefully everything is okay with that, because I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to go to that. But Tyler, want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking ball with you. But everyone, before we do get out of here, if you're with us on YouTube, just hit that like button for us. Subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 4K by opening day. And if you're with us in podcast format, leave us a 5-star review. And everyone, that's all we got for today. We'll talk to you next time.